Next up is Molly Sterkel. Molly is currently the Program and Project Supervisor for Distributed Generation and the CSI program at the CPUC. She has a very interesting research portfolio that she'll be able to tell us about today. Thank you, Molly.
So why are we here talking about solar? Well, California leads the nation in installed solar. For those of you who don't know, this slide is probably already out of date. It says that California has 750 megawatts of solar installed at 75,000 locations. I'm fairly certain that that's actually 800 megawatts and 80,000. If you want to see this week's data, you can go to californiasolarstatistics.com, and in the top right-hand corner, it tells you a running tally on a weekly basis. But California has over 2/3 of the nation's solar market. It's the nation's largest solar rebate program. And we have 4 really important policies. John Giesman's still here saying that we were very unfriendly to distributed generation. Who said that? Was it John Giesman saying that or Mason? John Giesman said we're very unfriendly to distributed generation, but we have tried and we shall try harder, is what I shall tell him. But with our 4 policies that support self-generation, rebates, net energy metering, interconnection policies, virtually free interconnection if you're behind the meter renewables, and also our rate structures. Our rate structures are are tiered, and that's not so good for people who use a lot of energy and can't control their energy usage, but it's great in terms of supporting solar. So this is a graph that shows you the trajectory of solar over the past decade, with the red bar is in investor-owned utility territories, and you can see we've been steadily increasing. So this year we'll hit about 1 gigawatt by the end of the year, and maybe early next year. And that is no small achievement, considering where we were a decade ago, barely a blip on the map. We have many more gigawatts to go, though, to get to Jerry Brown's goal of 12,000 megawatts of distributed DG, a lot of which will come from solar. So the CSI program was launched in 2006. It was conceived as a 10-year program funded by electric ratepayers. It has a goal of installing almost 2 gigawatts in investor-owned utility territories, and it's best known for the fact that it has a rebate program that's available to most everybody. It also has 2 low-income programs. 10% of the funding is set aside for solar and affordable housing, which have been tremendously exciting programs, and we've learned a lot from them. And $50 million was set aside for RD&D. This is a much smaller program than the PEER program, but I'm honored to be here with you today because it focuses specifically on renewable energy, whereas PEER has a broader set of foci. I'm not sure how Lori got away with not doing a presentation today, but she must have said yes first. The prerogative of the moderator. Okay. Well, Lori runs the PEER program, so we're a much smaller program, but we're just focused on solar. And then we also have a thermal program focusing on hot water. But what I want to talk to you about primarily is the RD&D program, which we have an RD&D plan. It's got goals and objectives. Anyway, the main thing to look at is the 3 target areas established for program funding. The first target area, the largest bulk of funding, is grid integration, trying to integrate all this solar into the grid. When there's a couple of megawatts of solar in the grid, doesn't much matter. But when there's going to be 2 gigawatts in investor-owned utility territories, 3 gigawatts, people start to notice, even when it's behind the meter. Even when it's behind the meter. And now that we have almost 1 gigawatt of behind-the-meter solar, we've also seen the whole market for solar energy transform, not just because of our actions in California, but of course it's a worldwide PV market, and we're going to see a lot more solar on the utility side of the meter. So together, all of that solar, regardless of where it is really going to make a big difference. So grid integration is an important focus. We also have an objective of making solar lower cost, so we have some focus on production technologies and some focus on business development and deployment. And along the bottom, there's a little timeline. We adopted the program in 2007. We selected a program manager in 2008. We released 2 solicitations in 2009, and all of our we have funded 18 grants from those 2 solicitations in 2010, all of which are up and running. And so I'm going to show you quickly target area 1. We funded about $6.5 million. We have a bunch of projects. Clean Power Research, Tom Hoff, who asked a question earlier, is here. SMUD has an excellent high penetration PV project they're working on with Hawaii. Both SMUD and Hawaii both are taking, deep dives into certain circuits where they're seeing high penetration PV. There's a wonderful project with Edison and NREL. SunPower, Representative Blair is going to talk later. He's over there. You want to wave, Blair? SunPower has 2 projects, one in the grid integration side. There's a UC Irvine project and a UC San Diego project. All of the projects, we brought a couple of these flyers and we left outside on the table. All of the projects are described here. They're also described on our website, calsolarresearch.ca.gov. And so you can, and they have contact information for all the people as well. So, and I'm not going to read through all of the improved solar technologies, improved business models, cross-cutting. Since storage came up earlier, and Jerry mentioned that, I'll mention that several of our projects across these past few slides have integrated energy efficiency, demand response, as well as, I think there's at least 4 projects that integrate storage with PV. And that's a really important theme in our projects, is trying to look at what is the wave of, how when we get all this solar on the grid, how will it be integrated? And so looking forward to the future. Just mention that coming up this spring, we're going to have an additional funding opportunity. We've been looking for feedback on our portfolio. So if you have feedback on our portfolio, please let us know. When I say us, I failed to introduce Neil Reardon. He can raise his hand here. He's with a lead staff member at the CPUC on the RD&D program and is very knowledgeable on all the projects that we've funded, as well as our upcoming funding opportunity. I just close by saying, why does this matter? Like, why are we bothering to spend all this money on RD&D? Why not just give out all the money in rebates? Like, that's a lot easier, actually. It's a lot easier to spend $50 million on rebates than it is on RD&D. And I think when you look at how the utility system has to change to integrate integrate all of this renewables, or the more you go to the more I go to meetings and I hear utility planners say things like, well, it's fine that we're going to have all this renewables, but it's all intermittent, so we're going to need a ton of load following fossil anyway. And in fact, the Cal ISO came out with they're doing more grid integration research this year, but they came out with something that said 33% renewables is going to require us to have, 4,000 megawatts of load following fossil. And I think with research like this, you can kind of prove to the utility planners and the grid planners that actually through new technologies and new systems, we can actually integrate at a far lower cost. So I'll end there and I'll be around for questions, and I look forward to what all my other subject matter experts up here have to say. Thank you very much.